Hey, you guys. Right now, I've just got just Julie and Dr. Thom and us on it. But the waiting room is filling up quickly.
So is Katie going to be the host so that she can do the slides, or what are you going to do?
I am going to make Katie a co-host right now.
Okay. And then somebody just needs to hit record when it's time.
It's recording.
Okay.
Hi, Julie.
What's going on? You hear me okay?
Yeah.
And all your kids.
Okay, I just made you a co-host, Katie, so you should be set.
Cool. Yeah, my waiting room just appeared. What a nice, healthy waiting room happening.
Yeah. I'm gonna wait until actually 12 o'clock before letting. Then I can do an admit all in one full swoop.
Anyone hear my washing machine going nuts downstairs, or does that not come through?
I hear the rain pounding on your window.
It's not raining here.
That's
I could
wishful
say-
thinking. Yeah, you
I
keep
hear the
saying that as if
sunshine.
it's
I hear
justified.
the sunshine pounding on your window.
Yeah, there you go. You can keep telling yourself that it's always rainy and cold out here. It's just not true.
I bet you next week it's going to rain a lot because I'm coming, and it always rains when I'm in Providence.
Yeah.
So,
Could be.
you know, but I'm glad it's raining a lot tomorrow and not on Sunday. At least it won't, hopefully won't disrupt flying.
All right, well, right now, next week looks sunny, so
Oh,
no.
well, perfect. Perfect. See, I'm bringing sunshine from Arizona then. I'll put that in the suitcase.
Perfect.
All right.
And not even that cold. It's in the 30s all week.
Oh my God, in the 30s. Are you kidding me?
I'm letting people in now. Hello all. I'm just letting people in still, so bear with us. I'm going to give it a few minutes before we get started to just kind of let the waiting room slow down a little bit.
I'll unmute.
Yeah, if everybody can take this
I
opportunity.
can't hear her though.
If everybody can take this opportunity, just make sure you are on.
She's talking, but I can't hear her.
We can hear you. I don't know who it is.
Oh, wait. Yeah, I
Is
got
that
it.
Jessica? Yeah, there you go. For those of you just joining, I've just said that we're going to give it a couple of minutes to let some more people enter. So just bear with us while we keep admitting people in. And as you come in, just make sure that you are muted. We'd love to see your faces. I see a lot of names, but we do love seeing your faces. Don't be shy. So this is our way to connect. Sally, I just saw your face very briefly and it was nice. There you are. How are you? Excellent. Nice to see you, Bambi.
I'll say hello.
How are you?
I'm great, thanks.
Good. Okay. Sort of starting to slow down with the entries. So I'm just going to do a quick introduction. My name is Liz Wiley. I'm the executive director here at the Marion Institute. I will be behind the scenes today a little bit with just monitoring the chat box for you all and just giving you sort of the overview. So like I said, if you've just joined, if you wouldn't mind muting and staying muted so that we don't have a lot of background noise, that would be wonderful. We are recording today's session. So please know that we're recording. We will be sending this recording out. So if you're frantically writing notes or taking notes during it, you can just chill out. You can just sit back and relax and chill out, because you will get this sent to you in an email. And it will also be on our website, on our resource page that you've been sort of sent to a couple of times at this point. So multiple ways to get the information again. I'm going to be, like I said, monitoring the chat box. So as questions come up, please put your questions in the chat box. You can do it to everybody. If you're more comfortable just sending it to me, you can just send it to me, and we'll make sure that your questions get elevated to Dr. Thom. And so that's sort of the way we do it. Typically what happens, oh, and we have Julie Thom on here too. Typically the way that we run our bio bites and the way we'll be running these sessions on the Fridays is that for the first, 15 to 30 minutes, we'll be doing an overview and talking, but we will leave plenty of time, at least 30 minutes or more, for a Q&A period. So it really is your time to get some time with the experts and get your questions answered that might be coming up for you. I'm going to be turning the mic over to my teammate, Katie Mannix, who is our biomed program coordinator. And she's been the woman behind the scenes with all of those amazing emails that you're getting every day and all that great info. So she'll be the moderator for this, for these sessions on Fridays. So Katie, you take it from here, and I got your back.
Thanks, Liz. All right, well, welcome everyone. We're so glad to have you here with us, along with Dr. Thom and Julie Thom. And no, it's not a coincidence. They are a father-daughter duo. So we're very lucky to have them with us today. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and wade into the waters with Zoom here and share my screen with you. And they've put together a little bit of a presentation for you, which we'll begin with here. So give me a moment as I get this going. All right, give me a thumbs up, those of you with cameras on, if you can see this. Awesome. All right, so as I said, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Thom and to Julie Thom.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Just to introduce myself, for those of you who don't know me, Liz sent a little email out yesterday, which was a bit of an introduction. Been in medicine for a very long time. This is my 50th year. So I've had lots of clinical experience. I still see patients in Scottsdale, Arizona. It's a real passion, and I certainly am very appreciative for the Marion Institute for putting this whole 21-day challenge together. And as the email yesterday suggested, it's not like you do, everything in the 21 days, but you basically add it over time, and which is what I found with my practice. As people incorporate these ideas that will come up over the rest of the 21 days, their level of understanding of health dramatically increases. And I'll let Julie introduce herself with the next slide.
So welcome everybody. I'm Julie Thom. I am a movement specialist. So I've been actually in the movement industry or the fitness industry for about 20 years. And I have quite a bit of experience in terms of movement, health, wellness, education. So I've been very lucky to have my dad as my mentor and my educator in terms of health. And so I've actually focused a lot more on movement and how we can move our bodies better and be more functional and how that can impact our lives. So I have lots of information to share. And if you want to check out more information, I at my website at fitomize.ca. But basically it's all about how you move matters, and there's movement today. Next slide, Katie. So today we're going to be talking about, should we move or should we exercise? So I just want to read this quote from Idle Portal, who is somebody that I've followed for a long time. But the body will become better at whatever you do or don't do. If you don't move, your body will get better at not moving. If you do move, your body will allow for more movement. more movement. So so one thing to keep in mind when we talk about today is that no amount of exercise will undo the pathology of sitting or staying in the same position for too long and keeping you sedentary. One may only be able to go through your whole life without ever doing any exercise, but everyone must move as part of the everyday life to release about the differences between exercise and movement today. Next slide.
Julie, I just want to jump in. I don't know if others are experiencing it. There's a little bit of a lag. We kind of knew this was happening, so be patient on the Wi-Fi. I know that, Julie's got a couple of kids at school at home, so just bear with us if there's a
No
little
worries.
lag.
I do too. So it's all good.
So one of the things that we, as Julie just said, movement is as essential to health as is breathing, as is eating, as is drinking water. So, we often associate movement as being exercise or physical activity. And in my practice, people have always thought of that as, oh, you need to join the gym. And anytime you need to join the gym, people think, oh, I don't have the time to do that. It's going to be painful. What if I injure myself? It's too much trouble. So that's not really what our focus will be today. Our focus is everything you do in life and how do we incorporate movement into what it is we do, including right now, for those of you with kids at home who are doing homeschooling, interacting with them, playing board games, in addition to just moving around and doing our everyday activities. So we know that movement creates a level of fitness, and ultimately it will affect you on all levels, not just the physical level, but certainly also the mental, emotional, and spiritual. Next slide.
So physical activity indoors or outdoors versus the gym. So as I just said, a lot of people
Hey, Julie, you're really cutting in
exercise
and out.
of box. What you want to understand is that exercise is a modern day invention. So basically in the 80s, the exercise world, it all became about either the body.
Hey,
Hey,
Julie,
Julie, you're really cutting out. Do you think you could take your video off? We're losing Julie from Canada. Let's hope she can.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe try getting rid of your video. That might help. Thank you.
Is that better?
We can hear you.
we can hear you.
I did.
Perfect. Go
You
try
can
it.
hear me? I
Yep.
stopped my video. Okay. So let's try it. So we're going to talk about physical activity inside or outside versus the gym. So as we just discussed, that most people, when they think about exercise, they think of gyms or working out in a box with dumbbells and weights. But what you need to understand is that exercise is a modern day invention. It was actually invented and then really became popular in the 80s with Jane Fonda and Arnold Schwarzenegger. So you either became focused on fitness classes, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was all about getting bigger and muscles. So what that does, what the focus on that type of exercise is vanity and focusing on trying to get bigger muscles or trying to lose weight. But what we need to understand is that physical activity, if you do it inside or outside, is what we're after and is actually much more beneficial for the body, and all the health benefits is what it's all about. So we're going to dive into that a little bit more. Next slide.
So physical activity, said, it's really anything. It's anything that gets you moving. So we're going to sort of try and get away from the idea of exercise and simply into what do I do every day that gets me moving. Next slide. So as we've just said, it basically creates this level of higher level of fitness. And when you have a higher level of fitness, what's most important is the aspect of all your organ systems will work more efficiently and work better. And the whole idea of the 21-day challenge is simply, what can we do for ourselves on an everyday basis at home, really, that doesn't necessarily involve going to see the doctor or following those types of specific things. So this has become, that's why it's an essential component of health. Next slide. So we have these three different types of movement, and depending for most of us on the call, it's the physical movement is simply the activity that, of moving your body and being able to move your body and to move it successfully. If you're, depending on what your occupation is, if you're somebody who is a professional athlete, if you're training for the Olympics, if you require special skills, there are specific types of activities that are recommended to try and hone that level of coordination, powerlifting, that type of thing. But the reality is that's not what we're talking about. We're really just talking about, everyday activities, everyday things that you do, and everyday activities which will allow you to get into old age. Next slide.
So I use this example of learning to swim in a pool versus a river, simply for the reason of humans are inherently lazy, and we're wired to expend the least amount of energy whenever possible in case we need it as an emergency. So if you're going to spend any time moving your body or your mind, you need to know if there's a payoff, such as if you vacuum, you can clean the floor, you get a nice clean floor. If you garden, you get a beautiful garden. Or if you go for a walk, it releases some feel-good hormones. So movement is a function to improve your quality of life. But what's the function of exercise? So when you think of exercise, most people think of gyms or burpees or squats or lifting weights. It's hard, you sweat, but it's definitely worth it because hopefully it'll give you the body that you want. But like I said before, is that since the 80s, exercise has been more about vanity than about function. So the fact that the health and fitness industry is a $96 billion industry, it's doing its best to convince you that vanity is much more important than it is function. So when you learn to swim in a pool, you have a skill that that'll help you enjoy the water, but it has limitations. You know enough not to drown, but you might not look good, and you might look good in a swimsuit. But what happens if the temperature of the water changes, or the current that you're swimming against changes, or you can't touch the bottom? So really, what's the difference is exercise or movement for function versus vanity. And the choice is ultimately yours. Next slide.
It goes without saying, as we've already suggested, that there are tremendous benefits of movement. And once again, take away the word exercise. Movement does facilitate the things that exercise does without creating the concern, the worry, the aspect of getting injured, etc. Because we use it to reduce stress. We use it for anxiety and depression. It's obviously a thing which will improve our musculoskeletal type system. People generally feel a lot better when they move with everyday type of activities. They get better sleep as a result, and the results have shown that there's a significant decrease in risk from dying of heart disease or developing high blood pressure. Weight management is easier to control when we have some degree of movement. And as we age, the concern of lack of movement always increases the idea of osteoporosis. Next slide. So when we're looking at movement, what, are we really talking about having to, sit in front of a Zoom call or go into the gym? But what's the most important? Next slide. Julie, you want to do that one?
Yeah. So what's the most important is it's functional fitness. It's sustainable movement. So functional fitness is about training your body as an entire unit and not as muscles. So when you're a baby, the way you explore the world is through movement. So babies, or as humans, we learn 7 primal movements, and they are bending, lifting, throwing, pulling, reaching, twisting, and walking. So if you are around any babies or experience the world, watch babies grow, these are the things that we learn in order to explore our world and achieve movement freedom. Movement allows for freedom. And so what functional fitness does is it provides everyone the ability to stay strong and fit and move well into their old age, because it's all about moving the body as it was intended. Next slide.
So the whole idea of this concept of functional fitness is we do something And can you, when you finish doing it, excuse me, something that we need to do every day, and it should not take a great deal of time to recover. So when I ask somebody about, a level of fitness, we say, so somebody wants to go to the gym, they do a workout for 30 minutes. I say, okay, stop for 10 minutes and now repeat it. And if you can't repeat it, what you've unfortunately done from a physiologic perspective is you've gone beyond your physiologic limits, and you're actually doing more damage to yourself than benefit to yourself. So when we introduce the idea of any type of functional fitness, if somebody wants to run or walk or whatever it is they do it, they stop for 10 minutes and repeat it. And how we improve our level of stamina is by shortening to the point that we can repeat whatever that activity is. So that's the whole concept of functional fitness. Next slide. So this is the first one, and the one that, barring some specific physical disabilities, walking your dog or walking your pet every day. And this is a unique way. This is kind of how we walk one of our dogs, because she's old and a bit of a diva. So we carry her and she walks us. Next slide. Julie, you can do this.
Yeah. So it's recommended that how many minutes of movement should you be doing each week is about 150 minutes of moderate to intense activity. So you can start with walking, strength training about 2 times a week. So it's recommended about 15% of the 150 minutes, your heart rate elevated, meaning it's a little bit more difficult to discuss, to speak. So if you're going for a walk with a friend, you're going to do a little bit more speed walking. So you can go from like one telephone pole to the other, and you do a little bit faster walking and then slow down. But essentially you're looking for about 22 minutes. That's it, of getting your heart rate, or putting some extra tension on your ligaments, tendons, and muscles. And obviously balance exercises for seniors are fantastic, because falling is unfortunately one of the leading causes of death for older adults. Next slide. So one activity that I 100% recommend is spinal extension. Many of us, unfortunately, in this world now, especially with COVID, we sit in front of screens for way too long, and that forces our spine into flexion. So what we want to do, a lot of people talk about posture and want to improving their posture, or if you have back pain or joint pain, it's mostly because your spine is spent in a forward flex position. So one thing I recommend is getting into spinal extension. I have a tool called the Peanut that we'll be learning more about it tomorrow on day 6. It's all about myofascial release. But spinal extension is fantastic. There's a posture reset exercise that you can do, which is simply standing up and extending your spine. But it's really important to get our spines moving in all directions to stay healthy. Next slide.
So of course, the most common feedback we get is, is it essential? And why don't we do it? And of course, we have all kinds of reasons why people don't. These are many of the common ones. I don't enjoy it. The gym is intimidating. I've never been an athlete. I'm way too tired. I don't have time during the day to do it. In fact, I hate doing it. And it, it takes away time that's required to do my everyday duties with my family. Next slide. So part of the aspect of incorporating movement is to change your mindset about what movement is. So, if we're not ready yet, we obviously have to start thinking about it, preparing what it is we do. And preparing simply is realizing that washing the dishes, doing the vacuuming, walking to the mailbox, it's parking far away when you go to a store, are all part of what we're ultimately trying to incorporate. So the mindset is about realizing that it's not about having to go, as Julie said, basically 22 minutes a week is not a tremendous amount. It's not like I have to go and pound out in order to develop any type of cardiovascular fitness. Movement will create cardiovascular fitness, as simple as walking. Next slide. But in addition to the physical aspect of movement, it's also important that we need to engage our mind, because there's so much that we know about the interaction between what we think and how we feel is intricately connected. So centuries old, things of yoga and Tai Chi and Qigong. Many times people will say, they're used to going to the gym or running, a few miles, that, oh, I don't get any endorphin release from doing that. But what your brain gets is a tremendous amount of opportunity to move into a more parasympathetic place, which actually puts us in a much healthier place. Next slide.
So what you need to do when you want to, in order to get moving, is figure out your why. So I love this quote of, for animals, movement is not a chore. It is a temporary punishment for being physically lazy and out of shape. It's not an optional activity for better looks. So many of us have grown up with the adage of movement is to make us look better, feel better, because it's going to help us lose weight or look better in a bathing suit. But what you need to understand is, why is it important for you to move? So why is it's important? So what you want to do is you want to find out what movement means for you. For most, it's moving is being in the present and enjoying the moment. So if you meet anyone that has moving for a long time in their life, they'll tell you that it's something that they enjoy. It's something that it's not necessarily about exercising, it's about moving, because they have that physical freedom to do the things that they want. So you want to move for movement's sake, but the key is to find out what your why is. Next slide. So how to find your why. So there are a few questions. The hardest part to fitness is getting started. So as anyone knows, like New Year's resolutions and whatnot, everybody thinks about fitness, like, why can I stick with the fitness program? If I personally started the day and I was thinking about, oh, I got to I'm more likely not to do it, because lifting weights is hard. We as humans, we're lazy. We don't want to do things, and we just find the easiest way possible to get through the day. So how do we find a way to add movement that is not punishing or unkind to ourselves? So he who has a why can endure any how. So next slide, let's find out how you can find your why. So these are 5 questions that I ask clients and people who are struggling with finding their whys. So the first question you can ask yourself is, what type of movement makes you feel alive? So in order for it to be sustainable and functional, you want to find movements that make you feel good and that make you feel like you're accomplishing something. And then the next question is, what movements are you good at? A big one, a lot of people think that they have to do exercises or movements that they're not necessarily the best at, and that's why we don't continue with it. So we want to find what things that you did as a kid that you really enjoyed. So what do you value? What value does movement give you? So how is it going to benefit your life? Next one is, how will movement improve your life? And then the last one you can do also, if you aren't sure of how to answer the first 4 questions, is you can create a pro and con list, titled it Living a Healthy Lifestyle, and figure out what are the pros to living a healthy lifestyle versus not. So 70% of the fitness battle is won the day you realize what your body needs and when. Next slide.
So simple things that you can start doing if you're not already doing, that sometimes we do it without even thinking about it, is you go to the grocery store, whatever, just, don't park next to the door, park, at the end of the parking lot. So you have to walk to get in there. If you're going up just a couple of flights, take the stairs instead of the elevator. Remember that we play with our pets and our children, and that definitely involvements. And if you are at a computer with your job now, it's important that you get up. I suggest every hour for at least 5 minutes, just, whether it's go to the water fountain or go to the bathroom or just take a stroll around your office. We're sitting way too much, which is part of the sedentary aspect. And of course, on summertime and weather-wise, whether you're outside doing outdoor activities like gardening or cutting the lawn, etc., or just home repair projects. And even when you're sitting watching Netflix, watching a series, you can be physically moving. You don't have to just sit still. You can, when you're in a movie theater, you can move your ankles. You can be some aspect of moving your body. So it's always a good idea to have comfortable shoes because you never know when you'll have the opportunity to take a little stroll. Next slide.
So 5 key movements that you can start practicing daily is a 20-20-20 rule. So this is something that I talk about with people in order to help them. What the rule is that for every hour of screen time, you take 20 seconds and look 20 feet away. So in terms of the mental aspect and the feel good aspect in terms of the hormone release, by looking at a nature scene or just looking outside in nature, it actually releases some endorphins in your brain, and it'll actually help you move your eyes. Your eyes are a window to your brain, so moving your eyes can be very, very helpful. The next one is to move your toes and feet. Your toes and feet are the foundation of your movement. So there's lots of different ways in which to do that. And again, that's going to be covered tomorrow on the myofascial release email. And the next one is to rub the back of your knees, groins, belly, and underarms. In a few days, we're going to be talking about the lymphatics. I believe that's on day 7. And moving your lymph is a really important aspect of health because it's the one part of your body that doesn't have a pump. So rubbing behind your knees, groin, belly, and underarms is a fantastic way to get some movement going. Also practice belly breathing. So a few days ago, there was an email about breathing. I don't know if you guys watched the TED Talk video. It was a 10-minute one. It's fantastic, great way to help you reset. But there are a lot of different ways in order for you to breathe. You can use a balloon, you can trace a hand, box breathing, lots of different ways, but it's really important to practice your belly breathing because as we age, unfortunately, we forget how to do that. And the last one, as we discussed before, was to put your spine into extension, to move your spine as much as possible to combat any deterioration of your ligaments and bones and all that fun stuff.
Julia, there was just a comment about the 20-20-20. Do you want to explain that again?
Sure. The 20-20-20 rule is basically what you do is you look, just look away from your screen. You look up, you want to look 20 feet away for 20 seconds. And so I actually have a lot of different charts. I can send you email if you're interested. I have many different vision charts that you can use. But ideally just look into nature is fantastic. And you just want to focus on something away from your screen to move to exercise your eyes, because your eyes your eyes are linked to the range of motion of your joints. So I can actually show you a really quick tip if we have time, or a little exercise to show you how just moving your eyes can help you improve your range of motion. So, but for the 20-20-20 rule is just find a point, put a point 20 feet away from you and stare at it for about 20 seconds and it'll open up. It'll keep you moving and feeling good. Does that answer the question?
Yep. So we say start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And now we can do questions.
All right, I'm going to take a minute to stop sharing. Bring us all back together. Thank you both very much. It's very helpful. I know my opinion of movement and exercise is certainly different. Even, working on the daily stuff, just trying to refocus farther away and move my feet and toes, as you say, Julie. So thank you very much. All right, we had a few questions to kick us off, and then if you have others, please just add them to the chat box, and we'll be happy to get to them. One is, how does age affect movement? So we know the body ages, and can either of you just talk about how that impacts our movement over time and what we can do to kind of counteract
I'll answer it first. So we'll probably both, give an opinion. So if one starts, as Julie said, with the 7 primal movements that we do as children, but what ends up happening is that as we get older, we actually stop doing those types of activities. So it's the old adage, if you don't use it, you lose it. So, that one of the goals and the reason we talked about functional fitness is because, you want it when you're 75 years old, You know, if you were to drop $100 bill on the pavement, you want to be able to bend over and pick it up, or you want to be able to reach up into the top part of your cupboard, or if you want to be able to sit on the toilet and get off the toilet. You want to be able to twist and turn. You want to be able to pick your grandkids up. You know, that's really what we call when we're talking about functional fitness. It's everyday activities that we tend to lose. And so we see people, you know, who as they age, whether they're in nursing facilities or whether they're just, you know, out and about, they've lost that ability for a number of reasons. So the fact that our hormones are less, our joints aren't as supple, we, you know, as a society, there's two universal conditions actually. One is dental disease and one is osteoarthritis. There isn't any culture that's immune to either of those types of conditions. Osteoarthritis is simply wear and tear arthritis. It's because our head is heavy. We use our knees and our hips a lot, and they tend to wear out. And they wear out a lot faster if we're not using them through our entire life. So definitely things slow down, but it doesn't mean you can't still always do the 7 primal movements.
Great, thank you. I just had a question come in via chat asking about water. You know, a little bit different, but I know Liz is also inviting people to submit questions that may have come up during the week. So just shift gears for a moment here. The question is warm water better to drink than cold water?
The ideal is room temperature water. You know, so the answer is yes, the warmer the better, room temperature at least. When you drink something cold, in order to, you know, we tend to think of drinking something cold in the summertime more because our body is warmer and we're trying to cool down. Whether we're eating food out of the refrigerator or drinking something with ice cubes in it, in order for the body to properly utilize it, you know, we have a body temperature at 98.6 plus or minus 0.3. For the body to fully utilize food or to absorb and digest, the closer it is to that temperature, the easier it is and the less amount of work it takes to basically be able to utilize it. So, you know, if you're to eat a piece of celery, let's say, out of the refrigerator, that we'll say is 40 degrees, in order to fully digest it, the body literally has to cook it to raise the temperature up to about 98 degrees to fully. Now, if it doesn't raise it up to that, it's only partially digested. And then we have people with all kinds of health problems saying with their digestion, I don't digest things well. So usually the most important thing, especially in the wintertime, is that eating cold foods in a cold climate is usually not indicated. And so we always recommend that you have soups and broths and stir fries and, you know, grilled foods, et cetera, especially in the wintertime would be a more important aspect. So I would say the same thing about water. I prefer warmer water than drinking cold water, short of, you know, it's 100 degrees and you just done some activity outside. The cooler water will definitely help you cool down. So it's really a temperature type thing, but in general, the closer to room temperature you eat and drink, the better it is.
Thank you. I did have a follow-up question from Lisa, who's asking, can herbal tea substitute for water?
I use herbal tea as a substitute, but it has to be non-caffeinated, and which is what herbal teas are. I do not count coffee. I do not count alcohol. I do not count sodas and any of that type of thing as a substitute.
Bummer. I like my coffee. I want to ask another question that came up. You know, I'm being selfish for a minute, but as we're talking about the difference between exercise and movement, you know, if someone enjoys running, for instance, or weightlifting, you know, obviously these are more intense to the body. Would you ever discourage these, and really how do they fit into a larger picture of movement?
That's an individual question, and the answer is absolutely. I discourage it because when we do a medical assessment of somebody, you know, who basically feels that if they move a lot, they feel better. So the question is, why do you feel better? Do you feel better because you have adrenal stress, and what you're doing is you're literally forcing the square peg through the round hole, so you temporarily feel better because it raises some endorphin, so you get a sympathetic dominant place? but your sympathetic nervous system may already be out of balance. And because we want that 60% sympathetic, 40% parasympathetic. So it doesn't mean you won't ever be able to do that. We just have people slow down until they can do the activity. And the rule of thumb is go to the gym, do your weights, stop for 10 minutes and do it again. And if you can't repeat the exact same thing, you have now exceeded your physiologic limits. You're hurting yourself. And what you're going to do ultimately is you're going to age a lot more quickly. And in clinical practice, what I can tell you is with, I'm going to pick on CrossFit for the moment, but people who often are younger, they go to CrossFit, they do these activities, and then when I look at their labs, it looks like they're 20 or 30 years older because they've aged, because they're literally stretching their physiology beyond what their limits are at that particular time. The goal is, you know, if you want to ultimately be able to bench press or run 10 miles, that's great. But don't start off running 10 miles. You have to be able to run 10 miles, stop for 10 minutes and run 10 more miles. You can't run 1 mile. And if you can feed it, and then you'll eventually build up that you will be able to do it. That will not be exceeding your physiology. So absolutely, you can damage yourself by doing these activities based on all your other metabolic functions.
Thank you. We did have a question about lymph come up. Julie, real quick, I saw your screen highlighted. Do you want to comment on that as well? Maybe not. I can't
Did we
tell.
lose her?
I can't tell. All right, I'll move on to my question that came up about lymph briefly. And I know, as Julie mentioned, lymph is something we get into in the coming days, so we'll kind of unpack that together through the challenge. But the question or the comment really is, I've read somewhere if you've had a stroke, that lymph massage is contraindicated. Can you comment on that?
I would not. I would disagree with that personally. In fact, there's a lot of things that people think are contraindicated. You know, coming up in a few days also will be a castor pack. People will think, oh, I can't do a castor pack in certain situations. The reality is, if you're trying to improve your level of lymph flow, which is totally about how the body detoxes, one of the main ways the body detoxes itself. When you have a stroke, you know, it's not a function of, you know, we're increasing our circulation. Lymphatics and circulation are two totally different things. In fact, one of the most important things for a person in a stroke is to immediately try and improve circulation. And, you know, the Chinese have a much better aspect because they have treatments with acupuncture that the sooner you can actually start acupuncture type treatment, which is literally getting energy to flow more frequently, the more quickly one can recover from a stroke. So firm believer in lymphatic. I think everybody, and I would, in my practice anyway, since it's pretty much chronic disease, I would say I've never seen a patient with any form of chronic disease that does not have some type of lymphatic congestion, and they would benefit, especially with the upcoming days of the recommendings we're going to be doing at home for lymphatic treatment. So no, I would definitely recommend it, even in somebody who's had a stroke.
Thank you. There's another question here. Is it better to move or exercise in a fasted or a fed state?
Julie, are you on? You want to answer that? Or do we lose her?
No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
It depends on what your goals are, would be my answer to that. It depends. It depends on, yeah, why would you want to go in a fasted state? So me personally, I do because I feel better when I do it. It's all about yeah. I'm just going to say it depends. Dad, you can get into the specifics of it, but it depends. It depends on the person. There's a lot of different factors that I play into. So I do have some clients that do, and they feel good. And I have some other people that don't because they have different factors that are in play. So for instance, my husband doesn't, I do. So I think it's very individual to the person would be my answer.
So what I would add to that is, as Julie said, it depends on what the level of activity is that you're going to be doing. If you plan on running 10 miles, I would not recommend that you have eaten a big meal because, you know, remember, after we eat for 1 to 2 hours, we're pushing 40% of our blood enterodigestive system to be able to digest things. But if you're about to expend a lot of energy and you want blood in your muscles, be it in your legs specifically, if you're doing running, or your arms, if you're doing weights, for example, you would not want to be, their blood to be in that place, because you won't be able to do the activity. So the movement that we're talking about obviously is not going to be an issue, but if you want to specifically talk about exercise, depends on the type of exercise. I always believe the best movement for everybody, especially if one hasn't been doing it, is simply walking, and walking at a pace that you're comfortable with, where you can talk and you can walk and still breathe without getting out of breath. That's this pace that's very comfortable. So in some cases it's not an issue. If on a strenuous activity, it definitely would be an issue.
Great, thank you. One of the things we talk about is habit formation, and obviously that's kind of a theme of the challenge, is how do we take these things that we know or are learning are beneficial to our health and turn them into habits. One of, I guess, the questions I have, knowing that you both have seen patients and clients over many years, is what patterns do you see in those who are successful in developing good movement habits?
Julie, you want to answer that first?
Sure. Well, three key factors for me for clients that have been successful is the time commitment. That they understand that it's on the daily, that 5 minutes of movement is enough for them, and not necessarily just a lot of people, in the fitness industry, they always think, you hear 3 times a week for 30 to 60 minutes. But in my practice, for particularly the last 10 years, it's more about what can you do? Can you do 5 minutes a day? And starting off, I have a client that we started with 1 minute a day, and we worked our way up. Like my dad said, is like, can you do the movement and then wait 10 minutes and then do it again? So it's about realizing that, make an appointment with yourself and making the time. Other things are the equipment and tools that you have access to. So some people think that they have to have equipment, but your body weight is phenomenal, and using your body is enough to challenge yourself to do that. And the last one is fears. The fears, a lot of people are like, I'm afraid of getting hurt. I'm afraid I'm doing it wrong. I'm afraid of, the fear of holding somebody back, of not knowing, and that taking that away. And you can simply, by asking questions about it, or having, building a confidence in your ability is something to consider. So those are all things, like if you can take those 3 things and understand that, taking 5 minutes a day to do some body weight exercises and removing the fear of, is there a right or wrong? In movement, there's not. In my world, you could hurt yourself, possibly doing something, if I bang my head against the wall for an hour, I guarantee you I'm going to get a result. Is it the result I'm looking for? Well, that just depends. But, there are some movements that are a little bit more kind, like walking, but it's just giving yourself the realizing you're worth it. You're worth the time. You're worth the 5, 10, 15 minutes each day, is what my answer would be.
Thank you.
My response to that is the people who are the most successful in this, one of the slides I showed is to change your attitude, is to realize that and I think Julie mentioned that, Jane Fonda and Schwarzenegger in the 70s and 80s sort of gave this image that, in order to be healthy, you had to somehow dramatically increase your cardiovascular level of fitness. Well, it's now known that movement will increase your cardiovascular fitness, because everything about your body will get better. So the concept is, when people get out of the idea that, oh, I have to do something, and they just start doing it because it's an everyday thing. In fact, a lot of the things that we've already shared is something that you already do and really don't even think about it. You breathe, as Kitty, about 21,000 times a day, 21,000 times a day. And all we say is, if you take the time of those 21,000, you take consciously think about 100 times taking a deep breath. If you do that on an ongoing basis, you will automatically start taking deep breaths without thinking about it. If you know that moving is, everyday activity, getting outside is part of what you do, you will figure out that, and you won't, oh, I have to spend 30 minutes outside today. You will just be able to get outside today. If you know that drinking water is an important aspect, it's not like, you may have to fill up a couple of liters of jugs to say, well, how much water am I drinking? But after you do this for 2 or 3 months, you'll say, I don't have to think about it anymore, because it becomes incorporated into what you every day do, and you don't have to think about it. As Julia said with one of her slides, it's the aspect of, oh, do I get up today and say, oh, today's a gym day, where am I going to fit it in? Movement and movement creating health is something that you don't think about. As she said with animals don't think about movement. It's part of their survival. Movement is part of our survival. And when it becomes incorporated into your mind in that way, people do it. And years later, they're still doing it. And because it's just part of what they do, but they don't have to think about it. They don't have to think about taking 100 deep breaths, because it just becomes an automatic thing that one has done. Those people are very successful. And generally, what I find is it takes about 3 months. Over the course of 3 months, people just start to do these things, and it becomes part of their life. And then they just keep doing them.
I appreciate that. And I do know that you both mentioned walking. And if you haven't looked at the video for today's email, it is one of Dr. Thom's favorites, 23 and a half hours, all about the benefits of walking. So you can check that out afterwards. I have one more question on movement, and then I have a question on the parasympathetic system. So the last question on movement that I'd like to ask, knowing that we've got Julie here who specializes in this, are there any forms of movement people may not know about that you would encourage? So obviously we talk about walking, but are there any forms of movement that you find to be very beneficial that you might encourage?
Julie?
Well, it depends on not particularly, like if you want to talk about like labeling a type of movement, for me particularly it's myofascial release, just because my fascia is my jam, it's my thing. Your fascia is connected to absolutely everything. So for me, it's all about how can you release the fascia to unlock the movement. So for instance, I had a client today who went for a 56-minute walk yesterday, and she's now in pain. So she now knows that 56 minutes is beyond her limit, but she's done a 30-minute walk, a 40-minute walk, and a 56-minute walk. She now knows that 56 is too long. So we have to unlock the fascia in order to help her push that limit a little bit more. And obviously doing it, a 40-minute walk will improve that. And the other one is in terms of improving joint health, because my dad talked a little bit earlier about movement with age. If you don't use it, you'll lose it. The big one that I like to focus on is something called controlled articulated rotations, which is basically taking your joints to the largest range of motion under tension. Your body, as you age, we lose stability, we lose strength, we lose muscle. So what we want to do is be able to think of it as stretching under tension. And by doing that, that helps the brain and the body stay connected and helps combat the osteoarthritis that some people combat. So it's something that a lot of people really haven't heard about, but there's a lot of magic in doing it correctly and taking your joints, doing that type of stretching in the morning, if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, no, that's very helpful. And for those of you who just heard myofascial release, which Julie mentioned, and if that's new to you, that is the topic for tomorrow's email to you. And Julie's been great to share videos that she's put together on that. That was certainly new to me not very long ago. And I found her videos to be very helpful. So I again encourage you to use the resources provided. And I had one other question as well. And again, it was the one about parasympathetic. Does closing your eyes help to engage the parasympathetic nervous system?
Closing your eyes, what it obviously is doing is it's removing outside distractions. It's only one of our senses, however. We also have, hearing. So if you're in a quiet place, you know, and we could say in meditation, would you be in deeper meditation if you close your eyes? For some people, it would be. If you're in a dark room and don't have any extraneous sounds, you know, will you be able to relax more? Yes, but to an extent, because they've done experiments where they put people in rooms with absolutely no outside stimulation. It's pitch black, there's no sound, they can't hear anything, they can't see anything. And people cannot last very long because we need some sense of stimulation to make us realize where we are in space relative to the world around us. So if you're in a safe space, in a safe place, closing your eyes will help you. If you're not in a safe space, closing your eyes will actually increase your level of sympathetic dominance, because your brain will be saying, what if somebody's going to attack you? What if you fall off the cliff, type thing? So the answer is yes and no. Yes, if you're in a safe place. No, if you're not in a safe place.
Awesome. Thank you. So hopefully you're in a safe place as you're closing your eyes.
Correct.
Yeah. So what was I going to say? Oh, I know. Well, we've run out of questions for the moment. If you have questions, we've got a few more minutes, and I'd invite you to add them. I also want to just say that if you have topics that you'd like to see or reflections on how the challenge has been, please feel welcome to use the chat box that way. We'd love to hear from you. And I know that Liz sent out an email yesterday, and we actually did receive some feedback from some of you who are here even today about topics you'd like to go deeper into in the future, and we deeply appreciate that. And you will see programming content from us to respect what it is that you would like to see and hear about. A side note that next Friday we will be going into the topic of local foods and the impact that a local diet can have on your health. The Friday after, we will be doing a guided meditation for inquiry. If that's not something you've ever heard of, I implore you to join us. It will be live, although we will record. And then fortunately, Dr. Thom is offered to host an Ask the Doctor. And I want to make a note of this group since you're all here live. On Friday, February 5th, go ahead, if this interests you, mark your calendar at the noon to 1 time spot. We'll use the same link. And this is going to be just for challenge participants. It's your chance to ask the doctor any questions that have come up from your work with the challenge, or things that have kind of come up along this journey. And Dr. Thom will just devote that time to him answering those questions. So again, you can hold them for now, and know that if you're able to join us that day, we will just be fielding questions from the audience. Again, that's Friday, February 5th, noon to 1. Oh, sorry, it is a different link. I misspoke on that. And it will be sent to you. All right, the link will be sent out, but go ahead and put that in your calendars. Again, I want to thank Dr. Thom and Julie for their participation today. We really appreciate it. And if there are any other questions, oh, we do. We have one from Allison. Can you talk about POTS from a holistic position? Hey, Allison, thank you for your question.
So POTS is a is a syndrome, we'll say, where people, when they often, when they stand up, they get woozy, they have brain fog, they have difficulty functioning, and there's a whole syndrome that's associated with it that is usually due to what I believe to be a multitude of different organ system imbalances. Some people think, oh, it's a cardiac problem, so they'll go to the cardiologist who will assess it. Some people will say it's an endocrine problem, so they end up at the endocrinologist saying your adrenal glands, or you're not making enough cortisol, your thyroid's out of balance, or maybe your estrogen progesterone is out of balance. But the reality is it's a multi-system imbalance, we'll say, within the body that I have found. And so I don't find that any one system is the answer to that. Because your lymphatic system will be involved. There will be a cardiac issue. These people invariably have imbalance of their hormone systems. They often have digestive issues. And it's like, where did it start and where does it end? It's the proverbial stack of dominoes, and one gets knocked over and then the rest don't fall off, and then we go over here and then this. And so the body has an amazing ability to try and compensate when one thing isn't working. And when one thing isn't working, it tries to make something else work, but then that puts it out of sync. So I find POTS is if you don't approach it from a multi-system approach, you're going to have, in my experience anyway, a very difficult time to help people get beyond that. But the good thing is when you balance these multiple systems, including using many of the therapies in the whole 21-day challenge, people do really well, and you sort of get past, what it's tremendous imbalance and a tremendous day-to-day thing that affects people, specifically. So if the person who asked the question has that, my hope is that what you're looking at is not just who's the right person to treat this. The person to treat this is somebody, a biological physician who looks at all organ systems and tries to help you understand, and prioritizes. These are the systems we work on first, but it's not going to be one system, in my experience, that will correct that problem.
Awesome. All right. Well, Dr. Thom, thank you again. And I want to acknowledge Patty Rigo at the Marion Institute is busy applying links to the chat box. We have a Bio Bites, which is our monthly series, the first Tuesday of each month at noon via Zoom, where we talk about a relevant topic. And this upcoming month is with Dr. Jeff Drobot, a colleague of Dr. Thom's, on the topic of sleep. So as again, I mentioned the February 5th Ask the Doctor, but just before that, on that Tuesday is also this Bio Bites on sleep. If you're able to join us, please do. Allison, follow-up question to Dr. Thom, just briefly, do you treat this, or perhaps you could recommend, but I will offer that if you, Dr. Thom, want to reach out, I can always connect the dots here offline. And on that topic, if those of you who are hearing these things are, these topics, and you're thinking about your health and you're not sure where to turn, the Marion Institute does offer a really great resource, which is a care provider list that we do try to keep current. And you can go to the Marion Institute website within the biomed section and find that list. If you put in your zip code, if you're in the US, you can find providers closer to you. If you are outside the country, you scroll down and there's an international listing there as well. And I actually see some faces on the call today who I know are on getting into that system as well. So that's great. I want to go ahead and wrap up and just again, thank Dr. Thom and Julie for their time, and thank all of you for joining us. It's so great to have you all on and to be, community kind of oriented in the same direction. So thank you for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.